Good evening, Force Management Nation. From Force Management Manor here. It's coming up on a rain tonight, so I'm sitting on the back deck recording this video here after cutting the grass. So let's just get into it. What better way to relax than talking about developing organizational requirements? And what we're going to focus on is the force development process, which you should have the sheet there from class. We printed out for you in color. But it is just the first three phases what we're going to talk about. I'm Jim Kennedy. I'm with the Commander General Staff of the school here at Fort Belvoir. And let's get right into this. We're all excited. And even my cat's excited. There you go, Coco. So this is the force management model we've seen. This is the basic version where we only focus on the organization material solutions. Previous classes we've talked about determining the strategic and operational requirements from the NDS, the NSS, the NMS, COCOM plans, the Army plan, those types of things, the Army operating concept tells us what we need to be able to do. And then the last class, we talked about JSIDs, how we develop our recommended solutions to capability gaps we've identified through the Joint Capabilities Integrated Development System. Today, this is what we're going to be looking at. We're determining the organizational requirements. And that's this part right here. We'll touch a little bit upon the .mil PFP, designing the organization and developing the model. Let's get on into it. First thing we're going to talk about is put everything into context. You have to understand some basic terms. And there are four basic documents we need to understand. I'm going to cover a fifth, but there's four documents we need to understand in the first three phases. The first is a unit reference sheet. And it's just a proposed conceptual design. It's the very basics of what this organization that we're going to develop or modify needs to be able to do. It's very simple. It's the basic skeleton. Next, you get the force design update. This is the doctrinally correct design. It's developed at TRADOC. They staff it with all the branches and the functional areas. It's basically the shell that is used to build the toe. Next, and the final one, the big one we'll talk about today, is the table of organization and equipment. You're probably familiar with that. Well, that is designed in phase 3 of the force development process. This is the full meal deal. This is everything that is absolutely required for this mission to do its doctrinally correct mission with all the doctrinally correct equipment and personnel. This is everything that is required. And this is what we use in the POM process, what we need money for in the out years. We'll talk that in F107 in the PPB class. This is approved by HQDAG3, and you can find these in FMS Web. The next thing you need to understand is the basis of issue plan. Whereas the other things we've talked about deal with building and modifying a unit, but if we're only going to change equipment, predominantly equipment, and we'll give you the example of the new handgun or the new JLTV, there's no reason to go back and change these other processes here with a unit reference sheet, take the time to do a force design, staff with everybody. A basis of issue plan is nothing more than a document that explains how we're going to replace the new equipment and any associated support personnel and equipment, because you may add a new mechanic, you may add 2 drivers or 2 operators, just depending on what the equipment is. So this is predominantly when you're doing a equipment addition or swap. It's what a basis of issue plan is for. It's a little bit more complicated, but for our purposes, that's basically what it is. And these are found in FMS Web as well. The final thing we're going to talk about is the modified table of organization equipment. That's an MTO. That's a modified TOE, and that is an authorization document. Sometimes we can't afford everything. We have to assume because of other priorities. Some places we assume risk. As an example, we may think it's a great idea to have 2 physical therapist majors in each battalion. As a requirement, that may be on the TOE. However, because of the timeline it takes to hire new, to recruit new, train new, and staff physical therapists in the battalion, you may be required to, but only authorized 1, because we want to move those funds to some other organization and not assume risk somewhere else, but maybe assume risk there. But that's what we say we need for the unit to do, and it's the 2 is what it needs in its wartime mission. And these are again also found at FMS Web. So there are 2 big organizations in capability development for organizations, which is what we're talking about today. That's why you don't see Army Futures Command there. You see Training and Doctrine Command. Well, they have 2 places: the Force Design Directorate at CAD, at the Command Arms Center at Fort Leonardwood, Fort Leavenworth. My apologies. And then you have the Center of Excellence. Those generally located where the schools are. And there's the TICMs and the ICDTs that help develop capabilities and help develop the basic organizational structure of the units that we're going to talk about. And DAG 357, they approved these designs, and they also have as a field operating agency the Force Management Support Activity that does all the work updating and managing TOWs, BOIPs, and MTOWs. When you have input, you go to your Center of Excellence. That's your link. Get your 06 involved, tell them to call the 06 there, explain what you want, why it's important, but that's how you get that's how and where you get your recommendations and your thoughts into the process. So here's the force management model. We talked about this at the very beginning, but I'm going to add these little yellow boxes that you just saw here. And the reason I'm adding them is so that when we go through the force development process, the 5 phases of building a unit, an organization, or modifying an organization, those yellow blocks are where the different phases are from phase 1 to phase 5. We're only going to cover through phase 3 today. You talked about the CBA, the capabilities-based assessment. In the JSIDS class, that happens in that blue box right here. So let's get into the force development process. This is what it looks like. It's very simple. I'm going to go through it right quick. The first 3 phases we're going to talk about today, that's who owns them. So TRADOC owns the first 2, and the Army staff owns the 3rd phase. The first phase is to develop the capability. This is really what we did in JSIDS with the CBA. Those are your big players, some key inputs, what the current force structure you have, what the capability gaps are. You do the math in the CBA, find out you've either got excess or shortage, and your outputs are in .mil PFP format. We've talked about that before, and the 2 big outputs for us are the URS and the ICD for this course. The ICD will go off to, is developed by Futures Command. They will work that into the DAS that you just had a class on that. You can see that in the video, the separate video for the DAS. But today we're only going to concern ourselves with the URS because that is for a unit. Unit reference sheet deals with building units or modifying units. So the second phase is again owned by TRADOC. This is where we apply doctrine to come up with a design, a doctrine correct design. Those are some of the players, some of the inputs. So we look at doctrine, what required capabilities. The URS is a big input because that comes from the Center of Excellency experts. And the output is an approved design called an FDU, a Force Design Update. We'll go over what that looks like in a minute. That then goes from TRADOC up to the Army staff to the G3, where they apply a lot of rules, and they develop the organizational model, the TOW, what this thing looks like. Think of a model airplane. You got a bunch of pieces. The TOW is the map to what all that organization is going to look like and what it should be able to do. So there are your players, GA357 and Yusuf FEMSA, who does all the work documenting into our force management system. Lots of inputs, the big one being the force design update. They have a whole lot of policy and procedural rules. And their output is the organizational requirements. That is the TOW or the BOIP if we're only changing equipment. Think JLTV is a pretty much only changing the equipment piece of the unit. Then you have the last 2 phases. We're going to cover those in other classes, so I'm not going to mention them here because we're only talking the first 3. And again, you can see where those phases, phase 1 through 5, are in the force development or in the force management model on the previous slide with those yellow boxes. So let's talk about each of these different little documents. The URS is a basic structure. It's got those different items there, the sections, what the mission is. what the capabilities are, what limitations it has. In other words, it may need cooks, it may need a headquarters, it may need comm support, it may need maintenance support, how much stuff it can carry, and a small organizational chart. And it's generally only the personnel and equipment needed to complete the mission. So it may not have any cooks on it because this is just coming from the Center of Excellence. It's very, very basic. And here's an example of what one might look like. There again, you see the mission and capabilities, the basic structure for people, and basic structure for equipment. Very basic, and this is just for training purposes only. Next is the force design update. That is both a process and a document, which gets a little complicated. Is after you process, which is shepherding and staffing that force design update through the approval processes. It is developed by the Force Design Directorate at TRADOC using the unit reference sheet, and they submit it to all the Centers of Excellence and proponents so that they can look at it to make sure all of their requirements are met. And this includes the mission essential warfighting requirements for people, equipment, and supporting architecture, meaning mechanics, cooks, signaliers, engineers, you name it, administrative people, and then TRADOC FED manages this overall process. They take the URS, turn it into a force design update that looks, it's got these 7 parts here. We're not going to get into what all these are, but you can see there's a lot of different things in there. Cost benefit analysis. If we do this, what else can we not do? How much is it going to cost in terms of funds? There's a briefing packet, the URS that came up from the school, and any rules of allocation. In other words, how many of these do we need per battalion or per 1,000 people? We'll look at ROEs more in F104 for TAA, or excuse me, in F10 in TAA. And here's kind of what one might look like. There is your personnel impact, some background discussion, the design, facilities impact, equipment impact, rules of allocation impact, comments from everybody, and they're just an unclass example for training purposes of what one might look like. Next is the TOW. It is a requirements document, as mentioned before. It identifies all personnel and equipment and a lot of personnel specialties, ASIs, additional skill identifiers, ranks, tells you everything you need, and it represents everything of the same type. So all engineer horizontal units have the same TOW. All infantry brigades have the same TOW. All armor brigades have the same TOW. All chemical decom platoons have the same TOW. That's what it describes. These are viewable in FMS Web. And this is how we state our Army requirements. This is a document that is used in developing how much the Army is going to cost in the out years for people and equipment. The BOIP, as mentioned before, is a requirements document, and it's for new equipment and associated items and personnel. So you may, like with the pistol, we're not going to get any new people with it, but you may get some special tools that go inside the armorer's toolkit. The document integrates the use of PHMSA, add these to TOWs, commonly done with fielding type issues or a replacement, a new equipment. And there's just 2 examples that would be using, these will change the TOW, but we're not going to go through the whole URS FDU TOW approval process just to take Humvees and swap them out in units. So it's a faster system. Some other documents you may have heard of, won't get too much into these, they're in your reading. There's lots of different types of TDAs. Here's what they are, but these TDAs are generally for the generating force, units that, generally speaking, do not deploy, that perform our Title 10 functions. And there's just a list of those for your education. Once the TOW is approved, about that time, the G357 conducts what's called a FIFA analysis, a force integration functional area analysis. And this is to make sure that the idea is acceptable, feasible, supportable, and any risks identified, so that when these units do show up, They've got the proper structure, the E-dates, the UICs, the authorization requirements, the TOs and MTOs are correct. Manning requirements are done. Can we support the number of people that are going to be required for this? Does the promotion pyramid support any additions? The MOS feeders, any material requirements for equipping? Can it be equipped on time with the DAS? Do we have enough equipment to do it? Any training issues for unit level training? They don't get individuals, they look at unit level training. When can that be done? How is that going to be done? Is that going to be done by the local brigade, 06 certifying it, or CTC rotation? How's it going to be sustained for personnel and equipment over time? And of course, the cost for all this. There's tons of funding factors you have to figure in. Any deploying considerations? Can it fit on the current aircraft? How long will it take? Are the rail and trans assets available and supportable at the installation that you're going to put to, which is the next one, is stationing? Where is this thing going to be located? Can the local community support it with schools and infrastructure? And then readiness. How are you going to measure the readiness? And what are the readiness aim points from it doesn't exist to when it stands up, so we can have the personnel and equipment arrive to increase in readiness? So it's a very, very important analysis is done, and it also helps identify risk to establishing the unit on time and what risk can be accepted or has to be overcome. And this is just a document I put together. It's kind of a different way to look at the force development process. This is each phase, and then who is in charge and who's doing what the inputs are, the actions, and the outputs of each one. So hopefully that simplifies a little bit for you. And kind of important, even though it's a little footnote down here, it's kind of important to understand that as you look at this, there are a lot of branches. If this is only for units, branches in functional areas that have TOW or TDA units and organizations. Functional areas such as FAO, FA50, 59, there are many more that have no units, but you do have people in units. There are 59s and FA50s at ASCC headquarters. You have a PERSO, a personnel synchronization officer in the G1 that works with the organizational integrator that manages these units, the ASCC headquarters, to make sure that your personnel requirements are worked and managed. So you're not left out, but this process is only for units and branches that have units. So here's our summary. I want you to make sure you understand the force development process 1 through 3, the purpose, owner, and outputs of each of those phases. What do TRADOC, the Centers of Excellence, and FDD, and G357 do? Understand the difference between the different documents that we talked about and the purpose and role of the FIFA analysis. With that, I think you should have a pretty good basic understanding of the force development process phases 1 through 3. If you have any questions, look me up on Global. Have a good one. I'm going to finish this up and process it and get to work on my next video, a redo of the JSIDS process. Hey, all the best to you. Take care. Force Management out.